Now we will listen to Matthew Ehret's testimony.
Introduction for a lot of people. It's a figure who, in many ways, was the godfather of the modern Green New Deal, where we have this shadow of a shadow who's been, imposed onto the people to carry out a policy that really doesn't come from him. And I think everybody recognizes that.
On April 14th, 2022, SuperSpreaders is proud to announce we will be interviewing Matthew Ehret of the Canadian Patriot Press. Matthew's knowledge of world history is unparalleled. He's been interviewed almost daily on truth-seeking shows, podcasts, and channels all over the internet. We're privileged to be having him on. SuperSpreaders is producing this series of primers for those who might not yet have been exposed to Matthew Ehret's erudite knowledge. Today's primer comes from an article by Matthew Ehret, link in the description below. Today's subject, multipolarity. Fellow Canadian James Corbett recently made a video claiming to prove that China and Russia were both in on the World Economic Forum's Great Reset, the now infamous scheme to reset and change all modern banking, governmental, legal systems in the world to conform to World Economic Forum needs and policies. Corbett based these claims on two documents, one each from the Canadian and US, and one from Chinese government. He shows that the same text appears in both documents, all giving the usual pains to climate change, one world government, diversity and inclusion, etc., etc. This is an attempt to show that Russia and China and the disagreements between them and conflict with the Western powers is nothing more than controlled opposition. Therefore, don't put any stock in any arguments that propose that Russia or China might be acting out of benevolence or in the interests of humankind, or might even be enemies of the World Economic Forum. Corbett's video was hugely popular, going viral. Matthew Ehret then responded on a video interview and proceeded to write an article rebutting some of Corbett's claims, focusing both on the sometimes narrow view of modern libertarian thinking and the differences between Russia and China's approach to globalists.
I think the point that I often try to make with people who do tend to fall into a very black or white, polarized, Manichaean sort of approach to analyzing either history or current geopolitical events is that there's a nuance that you have to appreciate. And when talking about the United States, it was very common for a very long time for people to think that the U.S. was one behemoth monolith, one imperial thing that had just run roughshod over the world. Any evidence that there is a fight run by people utilizing broad power within governments against this depopulation world government agenda cannot be seen. It doesn't mesh with the intellectual filters.
Ehret acknowledges that this is an understandable view given the circumstances.
And it's true, I didn't see a lot of resistance from anywhere within the establishment structures of the USA for 50 years. And it was only where, you had a sort of factor of Trump that upset the Hillary Clinton intended victory in 2016 that you got a sense that, okay, for all of his troubles, and there's a lot of big problems with Trump, we don't have to go into that, but you could see that there was something not falling into place according to script. And that also applies when you're analyzing Russia or China. There is deep state penetration. There are traders who are beholden to an international financier oligarchy who have been embedded within the structures of power. And then you have this other force that does not want to sacrifice their ancient civilizations on some sacrificial altar in some utopian scheme for a new world order.
Ehret continues to point out some very surprising facts about Russia and China and how they've dealt with right-wing enemy number one, George Soros.
And I would say, just on the issue of Soros not being allowed to operate in China or Russia, that's a big deal for me. He's running him and the thing that he works for, that he's beholden to, is running so much of our education systems in the West, our governing structures, our political these open society operations are all over the rules-based international order. But in China, he's been banned since 1989, since his puppet Zhao Ziyang, who was premier and then became Secretary General of the Chinese Communist Party for 2 years, basically was jailed in his own house under house arrest for 15 years after he tried to run a coup funded by Soros. Gene Sharp, the father of modern color revolutions, was in Tiananmen Square. George Bush Sr. was also on the ground, who had operated, who had ran the CIA for a period. People don't realize that this was a regime change attempt in 1989, and as coming out of that, Soros's tool was again imprisoned. Soros was banned for life from operating or creating any type of organization in China, and China kept a hold of their national banking systems instead of having them privatized the way Zhao Ziyang was moving. He was known as the Gorbachev or Yeltsin of China. He brought in Milton Friedman and all sorts of liberalizers. Same thing for Russia too. Russia has banned Soros since 2013 or 14? I forget now the date. Why did that happen? Why didn't they just allow these freaks to continue to run and control their societies? Why did oligarchs of Russia have to seek sanctuary in London or in Florida to avoid arrest if they didn't want to play by the new rules of the game? So that Putin put on the table when he came in 1999. So if you just ignore all of that, it just seems like there's a lot of parallels to the Great Reset, agenda coming out of Davos, and the sort of words you hear used by, let's say, Xi Jinping or Putin, who have spoken at Davos events. They use similar words like New World Order. Does that imply that they're thinking about the same thing, of the new system that's going to be this depopulation, one world, post-nation state government, the way the Davos crowd is pushing? Or is there a totally different conception of what that operating system is going to look like?
Ehret points out that China and Russia are lifting more people out of poverty than Western democracies are right now. While perhaps GDP per capita is bigger in Western democracies right now, the rate of growth and enrichment of the people in China and Russia is much faster. China is becoming a world leader in industry, space, high-tech, solid-state physics, you name it. Many of the fields that we've given up on as a society. Ehret, along with an increasing number of lucid historians and political analysts, wonder if, perhaps, it might not be the most outrageous thing to cooperate with Russia and China, instead of setting them up as perpetual bugbears. With its almost limitless resources, China is able to complete public works projects at an alarming speed, and some of the plans that they have on the table are truly astounding. Take, for instance, the Bering Strait Tunnel high-speed rail project. Can you imagine being able to travel from China, Russia, many parts of Asia, straight high-speed rail at 500 kilometers an hour, all the way to New York or LA? This, however, would require cooperation. We didn't know what to make of the idea that China could potentially be the good guys. We've yet to hear convincing rebuttals to the myriad accusations of human rights abuses in China. But then again, if China is being treated as the bugbear enemy, that's all we are going to see over here, accusations of human rights abuses while ignoring our own. What do you think? Is it possible that we've been misled so deeply that Russia and China should be our allies? That we should be cooperating with them? Join us April 14th at 9 p.m., where Matthew will be here and you can ask these questions yourself. Like and subscribe. We'll see you there.